Now, I warmly welcome everyone in the gallery. It's nice to see some faces again, lots of supporters, which is wonderful. I'd like to especially welcome the member's wife, Christy. I'd like to welcome the member's daughter, Nia, son, Evan, Paul Lynch, who we know very well. Welcome back, Paul. Daryl Millam, welcome back, Daryl. And Councillor Betty Green, who's from Liverpool City Councillor. Welcome all of you. I call the member for Leppington.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I start by acknowledging that we today meet on the land of the Gadigal people. I acknowledge that this land was never ceded and we remain the only Commonwealth nation to have never signed a treaty with our First Nations people. And while my seat of Leppington is new, I acknowledge that the land itself has been occupied for tens of thousands of years by the Darug and Darawal people. Deputy Speaker, I was born at the former King George V Memorial Hospital for Mothers and Babies in Camperdown, a public hospital. I grew up in public housing estates and went to public schools. I spent my formative teenage years in 1990s Bonnyrigg, when the area was plagued by the heroin epidemic. Drug dealing was open and omnipresent. Overdoses, stabbings and robberies were an everyday fact of life. I saw best friends, classmates and neighbours succumb to drugs and crime. Some of the brightest, funniest, most talented kids I knew growing up are now dead or have fought lifelong battles with addiction and the justice system. When governments get it wrong, through either intention or apathy, they can fail entire generations. When governments work well, they ensure that regardless of your background, circumstances or structural barriers, with a bit of opportunity and some hard work, you're able to fulfil your potential. I believe that governments can and should be a force for good, that they should provide an opportunity for our best and brightest to get ahead. I count myself amongst those that have benefited from that ideal. That said, it did take a while for me to get going. I was far from a model student throughout most of high school. By the end of Year 10, following a couple of suspensions and prolonged bouts of afternoon detention, the Deputy Principal invited my parents to school for a chat. He asked whether I was intending to do my HSC. I said yes, and he responded with, "Not at this school." Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm happy to report that I did in fact finish my HSC at that school, Bonnyrigg High School. He left about a term later to go to another school, so 1-0. I knuckled down in those final 2 years and was rewarded with not just a university offer, but the coveted Funniest Person Award at the Year 12 formal. I was the first person in my family to go to university. Then the University of Western Sydney Macarthur, now known as Western Sydney University. After graduating with a Bachelor of International Studies, the plan was to teach English in China for a semester or two and perhaps land a job at the Immigration Department or in Foreign Affairs. Unfortunately, the SARS outbreak put a pause to all that, and to supplement my time and income, I took up a 2-week gig temping at the mailroom at Colonial First State, located at level 21, 52 Martin Place, an address that this House would recognise as the new home of Premier and Cabinet. That fortnight ended up turning into a decade in the financial services industry, including 8 years at Link Group, learning the ins and outs of the managed funds and superannuation industries in a series of roles across operations, product management and IT. Following one too many Friday nights sleeping under my desk to ensure a regulatory update hit its unmovable deadline, I decided a change of industry might be in order. That took me back to my alma mater, Western Sydney University, working in IT strategy and partnerships. It was here that I found what I had been missing in the private sector, work with a greater social purpose. Ensuring an academic's potentially world-changing research wasn't sitting exclusively on a dusty old PC under their desk, working with the data nerds to increase retention rates for disadvantaged students, and experimenting with cutting-edge gadgets to improve learning and research outcomes. Deputy Speaker, I've since had the privilege to work in industries, sit on boards and be elected to roles with a strong social purpose. It is richly rewarding and fulfilling work, as everyone in this chamber well knows. My time as a Director of Western Sydney Migrant Resource Centre and at Settlement Services International, helping members of our community from migrant and refugee backgrounds, have been particular standouts. While we rightly pat ourselves on the back for being the most successful multicultural nation on earth, we have too often sold ourselves short on the benefits of migration. My community is full of doctors, engineers and other professionals whose qualifications aren't recognised in this country. Instead, they find themselves on the fringes of the gig economy in dangerous, insecure and often non-unionised work just to make ends meet. If we pride ourselves on being a multicultural community, as we should, that means providing the same support and opportunities to people who have chosen to make Australia their home as those who were lucky enough to be born here. That belief has only strengthened in my 6 years as a councillor on Liverpool City Council, one of the most multicultural in the country. As the cliche goes, local government is the closest level of government to the people. What that means in practice is that there's a greater ability to pull the various pieces of the puzzle together to get results. While not as often on as grand a scale as the other two levels of government, the change you effect is no less important to the people impacted. Little wins, little connections and little stories. The thanks from a local butcher for resolving the interruption caused by traffic works from nearby subdivisions. The Saturday morning phone call from opposing sides trying to settle a clash in a cricket booking. And discouraging a local resident from filling the illegally parked utes blocking her driveway with alpaca droppings. Each of these true stories share a common thread: the swift encroachment of a sprawling Sydney on what were once the semi-rural fringes, poor planning and inadequate services and infrastructure that failed to keep up with rapid population growth. All too often, councils are expected to clean up the resulting mess, a sector which is increasingly unable to do so due to flawed reforms, cost shifting and having its powers progressively stripped away. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time on Liverpool Council and as Treasurer of Local Government New South Wales. I've learnt a lot, achieved some things that I'm immensely proud of and made some great connections along the way. Several of those with colleagues I'm very pleased to see have joined me here among the class of 2023. Deputy Speaker, as a councillor, former chair of a local not-for-profit and now a member of Parliament, you get a unique insight into the challenges your community faces.